Sorry, everybody. There's not going to be any fancy vignettes or funny intros for this Sunday Fun Day video. I fear it's going to be a little longer than your average one, so I wanted to get right to it. Plus, I'm excited about it and excited to talk to you about it. So let's get right to it. Hey everybody, Joe Copley here for Goindienow. So glad you could join us for another Sunday Fun Day. And for this game tag, you're actually going to need a prop this week, and that is one of your books. And it has to be your book. So you could choose it. If you have multiple books, you can choose whatever one you want. And it could be any genre, any type of book, poetry. It could be a short story that you wrote in an anthology. It doesn't matter. It will pertain to this tag game regardless. And since we just did the week of indies, I thought it'd be neat to take each day of the week and make them their own little tag game. So each day of the week has a moniker that is tagged with that you have to follow within your book, something that you'll be reading within your book. So I know that's a little confusing, but you'll see as I go how I do it, and then be able to do it as well. Now I had given it the thought of doing this once a day for every day of the week, but then that becomes tedious. So we're just going to do one video here, and you're welcome to do it one day a week. Take each day and do a different video with the monikers that are set for each day, or do it like I'm doing in one video. So I'm gonna choose to do it in one video, so at least you'll get the gist of what I'm trying to do as well. That'll be helpful for that. And yes, that little box that's right over my shoulder is my green screen. I haven't set it up just as yet, but that will be coming. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I got some great suggestions from you all. Thank you so much for that. I will take a look at those and figure out which one is more viable to do right away. And rest assured, though, I will do every single one that you've all suggested. I will give it a try. Hopefully, I live up to your expectations with that. Anyway, so this is my book. It's called Amongst the Killing. It's a crime thriller, and it's written in dual perspective. So one chapter is written by the detective on the case, and the other by the mass murderer he is pursuing. And they're connected by a string of events that connects them and defines who they are in their story. And they tell their story in linear fashion all the way to the end. So it does have an ending. So let's get going with the tags. We're going to start with, obviously, Starter Sunday. So on Starter Sunday, you're going to read one page from the first chapter of your book. So the very first page of your book, you're going to read chapter 1, page 1. So again, my book, Amongst the Killing, chapter 1. Oh my God. No. Now, Chuck, just calm down. Calm down? I wasn't going to calm down. No, instead, I slammed the car door, charged up the lawn past my partner Harry, and was halted by a brick wall of Los Angeles' finest. Most were fresh off their beat and dressed in their dark blues. There were a couple of detective colleagues in their suits and ties, but all were standing arm to arm, waiting to do whatever it took to stop me from getting into my house. Despite what looked like the entire West Bureau standing there, I dropped my head and led with my shoulder, fully determined to push through. No one was going to stop me. It wasn't until I actually started pushing that reality set in. Was I really ready for this? In my haste to become the top detective, knee-deep in the case that would define my career, so close to the end, had I really forgotten what was important? Had I allowed true love to die? And if so, how could I be so stupid? I knew all the answers before my brain could ask those questions. I knew what waited for me on the other side of all those concerned faces. but I refused to trust my intuition, not without being able to confirm with my own two eyes what, in my lifetime, I had hoped to never see. So that's Starter Sunday. So now we go to Monday, which is Middle Monday. So I'm going to roll right into the middle. I'm just going to grab the very first, I'm going to get right to the middle, the very first paragraph I see at the top where I've strummed to. If you'd like to follow along in your Amongst the Killing book, you can turn to page 138, chapter 11. I was a complete wreck physically, reeking of 3-day-old garbage, sporting red puffed eyes and with black rings around the edges. 4 days of facial growth, small red scrapes and cuts around my cheeks, arms, and hands, and layers of old crusty dirt built up on my skin. Ironically, I felt better than I had felt in weeks, emotionally and spiritually, and I was smiling and euphoric. I stumbled upon my driveway, lost in the thought of the sweet, soft touch of my wife's skin. Just that tingled me right to the bone and sent a sensation of relief and warmth throughout every inch of my body. Then my thoughts moved to the warm, safe feeling of my daughter lying in my arms, light as a feather, but so magical, delicate, and glowing. I always smiled at how her innocence made me a better person instantly, and how her being a product of two people's love was the most precious gift I had ever known. Yet I didn't cry, not even a whimper. I merely looked up to the sky with the clouds, seemingly parting at the very instant to reveal an infinite blue that extended above me like a hug. Emotions welled up inside me again, but they were emotions of protection and love, something I hadn't felt since the days my girls were gone. I finally realized those feelings didn't die with my family. They just disappeared. I needed to find them again. All right, so that was one page from the middle. So for Middle Monday, you're going to read one page from the middle of your book. So for Tuesday, you're going to be doing To Be Continued Tuesday, which is reading the last page of a chapter and then reading the first page of the next chapter. So if you're following along in your Amongst the Killing handbooks, I'm going to be reading the end of chapter 16, page 208, and then reading at the beginning of chapter 17, which is page 209. And just for reference, the end of 16 is Jack Casey talking, and at the beginning of 17, it goes into Detective Charles Street talking. All right. I was kind of hoping you'd kill me, but after what you said, a tear ran down the side of her face. I'm glad you didn't, because I'm going to make the most of it. Thank you. She then shook my hand without hesitation and opened her car door. I knew at that moment that she had known all along, and said nothing until after our handshake. With one last smile, she stepped out of the car and left the keys in the ignition. Her employee magnet tag flung through the window and symbolically thumped into the empty passenger seat. I smiled, hopped into the driver's seat, and sped off. I didn't know if it was sheer exhaustion or just the gravity of all that it had done that had hit me. But suddenly, emotion flowed like a dam bursting. At first, there was a couple random leaking streams, then a couple spitting bursts. Alas, the overwhelming constant flows raced down the side of my face. The emphasis I thwarted of my human being for so long drained my body into an uncontrollable involuntary response. I kept thinking how this was where I'd lose it all and everything I had accomplished would go spiraling from here. Yet what I found instead was how much this process had relieving and healing properties, and how it simply renewed my vigor. Perspective is a wonderful asset. 5 minutes down the road, this cleansing ended, and I redirected my focus to concentrate on matters at hand. I finally had an end goal in sight, without compromise, and without my own self destruct mechanism activating. Now it was up to me to get there. Okay, Detective Street, say something. Sure thing, Agent Pachenko. Hey, since I have you here, I've been meaning to ask you. Do you have 5 of the same exact outfit, or do you rotate 2 between dry cleanings? The boys and I were thinking it might be nice to see break things up a little bit. Maybe a bright colored blouse, or maybe even a skirt, or maybe you let your hair down and go for something different, seductive, maybe. No? I think that's plenty out of you, Detective Street. Your levels are good. I always hated wearing those damn wires. It never felt right against my chest, almost like a pain that you can't get to go away by stretching. I really hated them at that moment though, because as soon as I turned away and stopped paying attention, a real pain shot through my entire upper body. A pain that made me release a hacking half cough, half gasp. As I leaned over to catch my breath, I got a little extra pain from the wires tape coming loose and ripping out a couple chest hairs. My first thought was this was a heart attack, but then I felt a pair of hands grip the crook of my arm. Actually, I felt the sting of sharp nails digging deeply into my skin. Even though I had a long sleeve shirt on, I knew this was no heart attack. My eyes were watery at first, but then the cloud lifted and I stood straight up, and I knew the freight train that was just rolling in. So that is to be continued Tuesday. Now we head over to one of our favorite Twitter tagging aspects, which is, of course, One Line Wednesday. And, I haven't had enough of Jack Casey in here, so I picked a line from Jack Casey to do for here. Um, so this is on page 7 of Amongst the Killing for anybody following along in their trusty handbooks. All right. In the end, that's all we are, animals. Just because we have an advanced understanding of cognitive functioning and the rare ability to rationalize doesn't make us better. It makes us weak. I cheated there. Added the second line. But yeah, no, this One Line Wednesday. So you have that done. That one's easy, huh? So then we move on to Talkative Thursday. And for Talkative Thursday, what we're going to do is read a dialogue exchange between two characters. Um, with the understanding that there will be some description in between or to open the exchange. But if you can find a section that has mostly dialogue, that would be ideal. And if it's all dialogue, wow, that's amazing. That would be awesome to hear. But mine does have a little bit of description, and I'm going to set it up right before the dialogue with a little description as well. Um, but if you're following along in your Amongst the Killing Handbooks, it's page 191. And this is an exchange between Detective Street and the U.S. Marshal team that he's meeting for the first time. So this is his case with Jack Casey. They've been assigned to help him with this case. All right. Moreover, this lady, Special Agent Pachenko, was more impressive by the second. The way she carried herself, her confidence seemed almost innate, like she was ready for anything and knew it was coming. I'd never met anyone like that before. Detective Street, this is Deputy Rick Heron and Deputy David Drove. Rick has a master's Rick has a master's in sociology from Rutgers University and 5 years field service with the FBI. He specializes in apprehending fugitives that have a knack for staying fugitives. That's going to come in handy. Hello, Deputy Heron. Hello, Detective Street. I was quite impressed with your algorithm for plotting out Jack Casey's course. Now we'll see if we can get it to work for us. David here has a bachelor's degree from Florida State and spent time in the special units within the United States Marine Corps. Hello, Deputy Drove. Let me guess. If you tell me what you did in the Marine Corps, you'd have to kill me. Deputy Drove turned around and stared a hole in me that was as close as I will ever come to being punctured by invisible eye lasers. No, Detective Street. I'll just puncture your larynx so you can never tell anybody else. To me, that's a lot more fun. Deputy Drove smiled at me, and I gave a half-hearted chuckle. But the first time they all looked away, I checked my rear to make sure I didn't just shit myself because it sure felt like it. As we stepped into the conference room, there were graphs, maps, and info sheets taped to the walls. There were tons of scenarios and reminders written on the whiteboard. It suddenly struck me that they had been here for days, and no one ever knew it. Granted, this building is gigantic, and there are several access points, but to get into this room they were in, there are only two ways, and one of those was to set the fire alarm off, which wouldn't have gone unnoticed. So, Detective Street, I'm not going to remind you the sensitive nature of the things we're going to share with you here today. I've been told you're fairly sharp and one of the best here, which makes us happy that you're the lead on this. Detective Street, I know Special Agent Pacheco had been talking to me as soon as I walked in, but I was so enamored by all the materials laid out. It turned all my attention to the handwritten whiteboard where all the psychoanalysis and catch scenarios I had never even imagined covered every space on the board. Still, even with that, I gravitated to one spot and one spot only. Fast is fine, but accuracy is everything. Wyatt Earp, detective. I had turned to Special Agent Pachenko. I probably looked like a deer in the headlights. Still, she had a smirk on her face, like she was impressed that of all that was in here, I had picked out one thing she wouldn't have never guessed anyone would have seen. I turned to her, and for the first time, I saw this feminine warmth I hadn't got from her before. She knew she had let her guard down too, but she wasn't erasing it from the air. Instead, she carried it into an invitation. Please sit. We sat down at the end of the conference table by a box of files and a half dozen huge full binders. I don't think we ever lost eye contact. He was a marshal back in the days of that being the only law, or at least the only law that wasn't corrupted by local politics and outlaws. Obviously, all this is overwhelming to say the least. Not really, having been immersed in it for, I don't know, even how long now. Most of what I see here, I see in my sleep anyway. Yes, I know it's gotten quite personal for you, detective. Well, you also know that he made it that way. Regardless of what I've read, heard, or even seen here in a short time that I've observed, I need to know one thing before we proceed. The stare down began. Was she looking for me to fidget? Was she looking for me to interrupt? I did neither. I just sat calmly waiting for what I knew was going to come. Are you in this for the right reasons? Or am I going to have to worry about prosecuting you as well? I gave it a couple seconds before I answered. Again, we never lost eye contact. There are only two mistakes one can make on the way to the truth: not starting and going all the way. That doesn't mean what you think it does. That's quite presumptuous, detective. That I wouldn't know what that I wouldn't know what Buddha meant, or that what I thought you might think it meant. Most people who hear that don't. Well, it answers my questions fine, but a simple "I'm in it for the right reasons" would have sufficed. If you want to appear smart or test how smart I am, don't. Because first off, we don't have that kind of time. Secondly, I already consider you one of the smartest people in this room. So clench onto that feeling of the warm blanket I just provided you every time you question that, and let's get down to why we're here, okay? I hated being read so well. It reminded me of Captain Rose. Sure. And that was Talkative Thursday. So then you got Final Friday, and my wife pointed out that some of you may be tricky magoos and think you're funny or think you're smart and read end or fin or done or fade out or whatever. But that is not the end of your story. The last word in your story is the last word in your story. So mine is receiver. That is the Final Friday. So you just have to read the last word for Final Friday. And if you're doing these videos once a day, that's a pretty quick video. So then we go to Startup Saturday. Oh, I needed to mention that too. I'm sorry. So you will need a second prop, and that is a WIP that you're working on. One that you haven't published, that's not out there. If you are working on something, if you're not working on something, you can pick the last thing that you published. I'm okay with that as well. But I am grabbing not the WIP for We the Moral Majority, which I know some of you are interested in hearing, but honestly, I'm shelving it for the time being and gonna come back to it during my time away from here on my vacation. Yes, I am going to take a vacation soon, but don't worry, all the videos will be done before I go. But anyway, so for that, for those particular this particular exercise, I want to read you the last thing I actually wrote. So I've been writing this little story here and there. I got about 27 pages in. So let me read you the very first page of this story. So this is my startup Saturday. When it came to life, Waylon knew of two certainties. The first is he would not live past 40 years of age. The second being that Howard would be the one going first. Now, whether that meant he'd be fulfilling his self prophecy on his own or getting the assistance so he does or getting the assistance he so desperately hoped for, it did not matter. Waylon Arnold Fox had had enough. He had met his foil. He had found reason enough and made peace within himself to know that death was going to be tough to reconcile for all of a mere moment. That mere moment of doubt at the exact moment he was dying. He faced it, but that would be ultimately the only logical step forward, dying. He hated that it came to this. He especially hated that another human being could invoke these feelings and bring about such a volatility within his usual rational and calm thinking process. Unlike his brother, he did not like that feeling. The animalistic nature of brutality. He would derive no pleasure from this opportunity. He would not feel relieved, good, whole, or vindicated. Not that any of that mattered. No one, especially himself, would ever know how he felt. He took a subtle but important comfort in knowing that, no matter what, it's beyond the moment he knew it was the end. Here you go. So that's what I'm working on currently. So there you have it, our Sunday Fun Day game for this week. We had Starter Sunday, which is the first page of your book. Middle Monday, which is just the middle section of your book, a page or two. Then you had To Be Continued Tuesday, which is to read the last page of one chapter and read the first page of the next. Then you had One Line Wednesday, which is obviously just one line from the book. Then you had Talkative Thursday, which is a dialogue exchange between two characters that kind of illustrates, some of your character traits. Then you had Final Friday, which is the last word of your story. And then Startup Saturday, which is reading a in progress, work in progress, or a the last thing you published, or something that you um, just started, or something that you're going to have published. And with that in mind, I won't. I know there's a lot of writers out there who want to probably engage in this tag, and there's the usual suspects. Um, and I know that sometimes I'll tag a lot of people, and then you won't be able to tag people. I don't know if people like that or not. Maybe you want to be able to tag some people, so I'm gonna keep the tagging who I'm tagging to a minimal. I'm going to introduce a few new people into the fray. Hopefully, they'll take this on and do the challenge. I'd love to see that. But then I welcome you to tag whoever you want beyond that, so that you have some people to tag. And I'm sure by the time it gets to the second or third person, the people we would all tag is probably taken up. But at least I tagged. Um, I got it going, and I would love for you all to, not wait till you're tagged. You know who you are. You know that you like to do these things. Do them. That's what it's all about. So please go right ahead and just jump right in and tag yourself in and do it. Um, I'm going to, with that in mind, I'm going to tag JB Taylor and CHRISTIE STRATOS, and then they can pay it forward to all the rest of the guys who do these tags, guys and gals that do these tags. And then I'm going to introduce this. I want to see three new people do this tag. Three people that I haven't tagged before, I should say. They've done tags in their own right, but um, actually, I haven't seen two of them. I've never seen a tag from. So hopefully, you embrace it and take it into the spirit and do it. Um, but I would love to see Marnie Kate read from her Remember series. Uh, you've been tagged, Marnie, so get her done. And then I would love to see Heidi Angel read. Um, you can read from the Hunted series or past work, Heidi. But I would love to you. I'm tagging you here. I'd love to hear you read from your work as well. And then I would also like to see Christina Rienzi read because she's a fellow crime writer, and I need some crime writers into this thing. So I've never seen you do a tag, Christina. Maybe I just missed it, um, but I really hope that you take this on and do it. And I would love to hear from your books. So one thing I haven't heard from you, so I would love to hear that. Uh, so there you guys go. Um, I've tagged everybody that that I wanted to tag and beyond, and of course, like I said, the usual suspects, the people who do these tags on a weekly basis. Please continue to do so. I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy this tag. I hope you get an opportunity to entice somebody to buy your book. Um, I will leave the link Amazon link to my book in the comments below, and the people and of course the people I tagged and the quote and each day of the week what they represent, so that you can grab that and cut and paste it into your own. And with that, as you know, it's always time to go indie now. We'll see you next time, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.